How to use a Preval sprayer for painting costumes. Many costumers like to use an airbrush to paint depth, tone, and aging into garments. What's an alternative if you don't have access to an airbrush or you're working in a location without an outlet you can plug an air compressor into? A Preval sprayer is an excellent, relatively inexpensive option that can be purchased at most hardware stores. These are the components of the Preval sprayer system: an aerosol cartridge with a cap, an uptake tube with a filter, and a glass jar for the medium to be sprayed that closes with a cap. Take your aerosol cartridge and uptake tube and insert the end of the uptake tube without the filter into the port at the base of the cartridge. You can use a Preval sprayer with any liquid of low viscosity, but I want to talk really quickly about how to mix acrylic or textile paint with water to use it to paint costumes. I combine a garbanzo bean sized quantity of acrylic or textile paint with 2 ounces of water. These containers hold up to 6 ounces of water and have hash marks on the side you can measure by. Screw the lid on tight and shake it vigorously to fully mix the acrylic or textile paint into the water. Remove the glass bottle's cap and screw the aerosol cartridge with tube onto the top. Make sure the level of the liquid inside is deep enough that the uptake tube extends entirely down into it. For the best outcome, you should paint your garments while they're on a dress form. I prepare my form for painting by covering it in plastic. Dry cleaning bags and packing tape work well for this purpose. And now it's demonstration time.
You'll notice I'm outside on my porch. I'm going to demonstrate Preval sprayers to you. You see, I have a costume on a dress form that's been wrapped in plastic here. And if I were doing this at work, I could do 1 or 2 setups like this inside the dye facility with the exhaust vents turned on. But if I have a lot of these to do, sometimes I will set up outside the theater in the grass and bring everything out there. So I'm doing this outside because outdoors is sort of a natural spray box. One other thing to notice is that even though I'm outside, I have plastic laid out underneath my form where I'm painting. Because when you spray, most of the paint gets onto your costume, but some is airborne and can travel a little bit. In the dye shop, I still cover the floor even though it's a messy room, because I don't want to mop the floor if I don't have to, and I don't want more stains on the floor than those that may already be there from prior accidents. So I lay out a drop cloth and move my dress forms onto that drop cloth so that any aerosolized paint that doesn't go onto the costume will probably fall onto that drop cloth or get sucked away by the ventilation. In terms of PPE that I recommend, I always put on a full coverage apron and nitrile gloves. I put my hair up and control it so it's not falling in my face and not getting potentially paint in it if possible. And I have a particle mask. In this case, because we're in a pandemic, your cloth COVID masks will be sufficient protection for airborne paint, since they protect you against airborne virus and so forth. And I'm putting this on even though I'm outside, just because it's better to be too safe than sorry.
In non-pandemic times, you can protect yourself against airborne paint droplets with a disposable surgical mask, such as these, or any disposable respirator that protects against particulates and dust. I keep a stock of these in the PPE cabinet for my dye studio usage.
This is your Preval sprayer. It has the cartridge, the uptake tube, the container filled with thinned acrylic paint in this case. You want to test your sprayer on something first just to make sure it's going to work. So I'm going to spray it onto this napkin. It's working, so I can spray it on my costume and it'll be fine. For this, I'm just going to do some tonal spraying, which is bumping up the highlights and the lowlights. This is a type of costume painting that I'll often be asked to do, particularly on relatively monochromatic costume pieces like this shirt here. And so you want to reinforce the style lines of it. So in this case, I'm going to add some shadows under the collar. So that when the collar lies down, it pops on stage and we see that there's a collar there. I've gotten a clog in my sprayer, and that doesn't mean that your sprayer is broken. There's a hack, I guess, that you can try to unclog that tube, because the tube that goes down into your paint has a little screen at the end, and if there are clumps of undissolved acrylic paint in there, for example, which is frequently the issue, then sometimes that can block the uptake of the paint. And the way that you can maybe fix that without having to take the whole thing apart and clean the tube is if you cover the sprayer hole with your finger, that will force the gas back into the paint. Since it can't come out this way, it has to come out that way. You see that bubbling in there? Let's test it out, see if that worked. It did. So now I can continue making my sweat stains.
The Preval sprayer is designed to be operated in an upright position. So this is another thing that can cause problems with using one. If you try to spray it at an angle shallower than 45 degrees, sometimes it can get clogged and stop working. A final note on heat setting your paint. Many of the products that work well on textiles need to be heat set with an iron, a heat press, or a high heat dryer cycle. Follow the directions for the type of paint you are using because it's frustrating to paint a costume and see all your work wash out in the laundry. If you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel and hit the bell for notification of new content. And join me every Thursday afternoon at 3 p.m. Eastern for my live studio stream.